this is what I'm going to talk about today. What is a general visual inspection? How to protect yourself when recommending a home inspector, the benefits of a pre-listing inspection, preparing for a home inspection, reading an inspection report, and also, of course, the impact of COVID-19 on our business. So according to the state of California, a home inspection is a non-invasive physical examination performed for a fee in connection with the transfer of real property of the mechanical, electrical, or plumbing systems or the structural and essential components of a residential dwelling from 1 to 4 units designed to identify material defects in those systems, structures, and components. Oh, don't worry, I'm not just going to be reading a bunch of legalese, but we're going to start out with some specifics. A material defect is a condition that significantly affects the value, desirability, habitability, or safety of the dwelling. Style or aesthetics shall not be considered in determining whether a system, structure, or component is defective. So you may not like that 60 shag carpet, but you know, not something I'm going to be talking about, or that is really a concern when it comes to the home inspection. The general visual inspection is an evaluation, it's a visual inspection and evaluation of all the major systems and components of the home. So that includes the foundation, the structure, the roofing, the plumbing, the electrical, and the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, or HVAC. So as your general visual inspector, I am a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So I'll be identifying, or your home inspector identifies deficiencies in 3 primary areas: health and safety concerns, things that will cost money now, and things that may cost the homeowner money later.
Sorry to stop you real quick. Can everybody please mute their mics so that there's no background noise?
Yes, please.
It's on the bottom left of your screen.
Thanks, Brian.
I think some people are not by their computer. That's the problem.
Oh yeah, could be. And unfortunately, I haven't found a way to mute all. I saw it earlier, but that control seems to be gone for me. And with my screen share up and this presentation up, I don't have access to my Zoom controls, except for stop share.
Jennifer Wardell, Star James, all those people. Sally Gabrielle, please turn them off.
Kit, is that something you can do? Or I'm officially the host now. Is that right?
Yeah, John, I think you need to be able to.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Jennifer Waldo, please mute yourself.
And it's okay, guys. We're still getting the hang of this, the technical world. But please, if just help the thing out, everybody just mute your mics, please.
Yeah, I cannot find any control over that, so I'm going to go back.
Jennifer Wardell, please.
Screen share.
That's fine. Go ahead, John, and hopefully everybody starts.
Yeah.
In there.
Okay. So this is the general visual inspection is not a code inspection, and the reason is because when a home is built, it's built to whatever the code is at that time, so if it was built in the 50s, it adheres to the code that was present at that time, but it's not required to be upgraded to present day code. So to specify when things do not comply with code is doing a disservice to everybody in the process. So the other thing is that everything will be fixable. Now, there may be things that are prohibitively expensive to fix, but everything will be fixable. There are some limitations when it comes to the visual inspection, vehicles in the garage or driveway, storage of personal items in and around the property. So it's always helpful when a property is vacant and not even staged is even better. And furniture, and although access hatches will be removed and opened whenever possible to evaluate equipment, your inspector cannot see into walls. So there could be something going on in a wall or something that will not be noted in the report. So here's a little history on home inspections. And this is, inspections were being performed in the mid 50s, and by the early 70s were considered by a lot of people to be essential to the transaction because consumers wanted to learn more about the condition of the house prior to the purchase. Sounds like somebody's making it right. So meeting the expectations of consumers required a unique discipline distinct from construction, engineering, architecture, or municipal building inspection. And so we needed to have some professional guidelines and qualifications. So there was a organization called the American Society of Home Inspectors, or ASHI, which was formed in 1976, and they established the standard of practice, the ASHI standard of practice for home inspections, and a code of ethics to help buyers and sellers with their transactions. Also around that time in 1976, the California Real Estate Inspection Association was formed, but that's a state organization rather than a national organization. Both organizations lay claim to developing the first standard of practice, but ASHI's is more widely used and well known. But today, these methods give inspectors up-to-date guidelines so that clients know what to expect from their inspection. The ASHI standard of practice for home inspections guides home inspectors in the performance of their inspections. And it's subject to regular review, and vigilance has elevated the standard of practice for home inspections so that today it's the most widely accepted home inspection guideline and recognized by many government and professional groups as the definitive standard for professional performance. So the guidelines for general visual inspections are the inspector shall inspect, and this again is a very legally sounding, but I just want to kind of get this technical stuff out of the way right off the bat. The inspector shall inspect readily accessible, visually observable installed systems and components listed in this standard. Shall provide the client with a written report using a format and medium selected by the inspector that states those systems and components inspected that, in the professional judgment of the inspector, are not functioning properly, significantly deficient, unsafe, or are near the end of their service lives. Also shall provide recommendations to correct or monitor for future correction the deficiencies reported or items needing further evaluation. The inspector is not required to determine methods, materials, or costs of corrections. Also shall provide reasoning or explanation as to the nature of the deficiencies reported that are not self-evident, and those systems and components designated for inspection in the standard that were present at the time of the inspection but were not inspected, and the reasons that they weren't. And of course, the inspector needs to adhere to the code of ethics. The inspector is not required to provide engineering or architectural services or analysis, offer an opinion about the adequacy of structural systems and components, enter underfloor crawl space areas that have less than 24 inches of vertical clearance between components and the ground, or that have an access opening smaller than 16 by 24 inches. So, I mean, I'm in crawl spaces smaller than that all the time. And, you know, I'll squeeze under a pipe that's 8 inches off the ground when I have to, although it's not any fun. But I do my best, but there are limitations. Also not required to traverse attic load-bearing components that are concealed by insulation or by other materials. Also, the inspector is not required to determine the condition of systems and components that are not readily accessible. The remaining life expectancy of systems and components is not required to be determined. Also not the strength, adequacy, effectiveness, and efficiency of systems and components. Also not required to determine the causes of conditions and deficiencies. By nature, I like to diagnose, but if I start spending time trying to figure out what caused a problem, I'm going to be there all day doing my inspection. So we report, we don't diagnose. Also not required to determine methods, materials, and costs of corrections. I think we covered that already. Or to determine future conditions, including but not limited to failure of systems and components. So I can't predict the future, of course. So here are a few items that are excluded from the general visual inspection. Environmental concerns such as mold, asbestos, lead-based paints. Now I actually do inspect for mold, and that's an added service, but if I ever see anything that looks like mold, of course, I will note it in the report, but there's no way to know if it's mold unless it's analyzed by laboratory. So I can have that done, but that's not really part of the general visual inspection. That's an added service. Termites, that requires a special license, as many of you, I'm sure, know. Rodents, pests, and insects, I'll note if I see evidence of that, but it's not really part of the general visual inspection. Hidden defects, of course, like I mentioned earlier, inspectors can't see into walls. Chimney flues, that requires a special device in order to inspect that. So that's usually a separate inspection. Also excluded outbuildings and sheds, those types of things, unless specified otherwise. Also, areas not readily accessible, security alarms, intercoms, audio systems, anything like low voltage wiring, those types of things. It's not part of the inspection. Central vacuum systems, which I see oftentimes in homes that were built in the 70s, maybe 80s, irrigation systems, solar systems, septic systems, sewer scoping. Not part of the inspection. Also not moving furniture and other belongings, because that's, you know, a potential liability issue. There's an example of a limitation in a garage. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to inspect that garage all that well. I'm not going to test an outlet on that far wall because I won't be able to get there. Same thing in this bedroom. There are a lot of other inspections that you can consider. A retrofit inspection that determines whether the home complies with state and city requirements of low flow fixtures, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, et cetera, et cetera. Usually the seller pays for this. Sewer scope evaluates the condition of the main sewer pipe between the home and the street. Termite inspection, that's pretty self-explanatory. Chimney inspection. Geotechnical investigation reports on the physical properties of soil and associated foundations. That's so typically if you've got a hillside home, that might be something you'd want to consider. And also other inspections such as structural. You can get a plumber out, an electrician, an HVAC person, a roofer, all those things you can do if you want. I've done inspections before where all those people were out there doing their inspections. So I wondered why I was even there. But of course, there are other things that I do that they don't. But oftentimes, you know, I will recommend, the general inspector will recommend whether or not you need to consult with a specialist. So I don't recommend doing that until you have a reason to. Licensing in California, there is none. So pretty much anybody can just call themselves a home inspector. There's no real regulation aside from what we've already talked about. So how do you protect yourself when recommending home inspector? Very important. You want to verify that the home inspector carries errors and omissions or E&O insurance to protect your client. You also for sure want to make sure that your insurance will cover you in case there's an issue. Recommend at least a $300,000 minimum, preferred $1 million coverage. You want to make sure that your inspector is a member of at least one of two inspection associations. We talked about those, ASHI and CREA. There are other associations, but these are the primary ones that really have a high standard. Just like realtor associations, you know, they have codes of ethics and standards of practice and continuing education and so forth. So keeps us all up on our game. The standards of practice from ASHI and CREA dictate a minimum requirement. So let's see. And they both have a standard of practice, but they're very similar to each other. So either one works. So here are some thoughts for preparing your seller for a home inspection. There are a lot of things that you can do to sort of know what you're up against before a buyer comes in and performs an inspection. So you can check the exterior of the house and patio covers for rot or damages, check electrical plugs for weatherproof covers on the exterior, check and see if there are any exposed electrical wires that need conduit, look for loose or missing shingles or tiles, look for damaged disconnected gutters or downspouts. For heating and cooling, you want to confirm that the heating unit emits hot air, that the AC emits cold air. A lot of this is pretty obvious, but it takes, you know, it'll take some time and some effort to determine these things. Confirm that the AC condenser unit on the outside of the house turns on. The fan. There are refrigeration lines that run from that unit into the air handler, which is someplace inside the house. And the larger of the two copper lines, it should have an insulating foam cover and be cold to the touch when the AC has been running for a few minutes. with the water heater, you want to confirm that it's properly strapped, which means that it's got a strap within 1/3 of the top and 1/3 of the bottom, and it's got to be securely strapped against something. And a lot of times you'll see them strapped, but there might be a few inches between the water heater and the wall behind it, which is not really proper. So you want to look for any leaks or corrosion. Is there a drain pipe connected to the TPR valve? That's the temperature pressure relief valve. It looks like that, and that does not have a pipe attached to it. But if there's a failure in the system, you can have really high pressure, very, very hot water come spraying out of that, and it needs to be directed someplace where it won't cause damage. Bathrooms, you want to make sure all the toilets flush properly, run water at the sinks, and look and feel for leaks under sinks. Confirm the sink and the tub or shower drain properly. Look for any cracked or missing grout or caulking. Look for stains or warped walls. Confirm that all ventilation fans turn on. In the kitchen, run water and look and feel for any leaks under that sink, of course. Look for any cracked or missing grout or tiles on the counter. Confirm all appliances operate. Check for carbon monoxide alarms. I'm not going to read through all of this. You probably know most of it, and I'm happy to make this, share my presentation with anybody who's interested. So you can I'll have my email address and all my contact information at the end if you want to reach out to me. But you want to have carbon monoxide alarms on all levels of the home and outside all sleeping areas. Smoke alarms in every bedroom and outside of sleeping areas. The garage needs to have a firewall that doesn't have any breaks or gaps in it between the home and the garage. And check for and see if there are any exposed electrical wires that should be in conduit in the garage. Should have a fire door that self-closes. And make sure that there aren't any open junction boxes. Those are commonly seen in garages, also crawl spaces and attics, but those are a safety hazard. In the interior, you want to look for stains or peeling and bubbling paint. Confirm that all lights turn on, replace the bulbs if necessary. Check the windows and doors. If there's a pool or spa, you want to operate that equipment and check for leaks. Confirm that the heater functions. Trim vegetation away from the heater if necessary. Look for any cracks and gaps in the coping or decking of the pool. Or you could get a pre-listing inspection for your seller if you want to really know what's going on before you put the house on the market or as you're getting ready to do that. So some of the benefits of that are you'll uncover previously unknown problems, allowing a seller to make repairs, updates, or replacements as needed or as they wish. Issues that you and the seller were previously unaware of could keep a property from selling at its highest potential price when it's too late to address them. So you can list a home with greater confidence about its condition, and there's a much greater potential for cleaner offers and a smoother transaction for both parties. So having well-informed sellers and buyers will work to everyone's advantage, including yours. If the buyer comes in and does their inspection and finds a whole lot of problems, that may give them a lot of negotiation leverage, or put the seller in a position where they need to pay somebody a lot of money right now to get something taken care of. So it's kind of nice to be able to get on top of that stuff before it catches you by surprise. Before or on inspection day, these are things that are going to help your inspector, who might be me. Make sure that the attic is readily accessible. There's an example of an attic that is not readily accessible. That's a hatch in a closet, and they often, most of the time they're in halls, but they're often in closets, and sometimes it's really, really difficult to get into those. I'm pretty resourceful and acrobatic when necessary, but it can be a real challenge. And I can't pull stuff out of a closet. Sometimes realtors will help with that, but I can't take responsibility for people's personal possessions. So let's see, make sure the crawl space is readily accessible. Here's a great example of one that was not. That's like a 1/4 inch thick piece of steel here that is very, very securely padlocked, as you can see through those bolts. And I had to come back and get into that crawl space on another day. And, you know, typically I need to charge a fee to come back to for a reinspection, and who pays for that sometimes is up in the air. But if the seller is responsible for it, it really should be the seller. Remove stored items from under sink cabinets. Here's an example of making it difficult for me to identify leaks. Especially now that I'm wearing gloves when I inspect, I can't feel moisture so well like I used to be able to with my hands. So I can reach under there, but if I'm wearing gloves, I'm not necessarily going to feel a leak. And it's, although I use a very high powered flashlight, it's difficult to see leaks sometimes when I have all kinds of stuff under the sink like that. So, and again, I can't really move personal possessions and so forth. Plus, if I had to do a lot of that, it would add a lot of time to my inspection. So in condos and townhomes, make sure that the HVAC is readily accessible. Oftentimes, this is located on the roof, and it's not always easy to get on the roof. Sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes you just walk up some stairs and walk out a door onto the roof, which is great. Sometimes that door is locked, which is obviously a problem. Oftentimes there's a ladder like this one that has a panel that's securely locked over the bottom of the ladder. And I can use my own ladder to climb past that lower portion, but sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes I've been in such tight quarters that I couldn't actually get my ladder to where this ladder was. So anyway, suffice it to say that it's very helpful if you can get ahead of the game with that kind of stuff for your inspector. Sometimes you may have to call the HOA 48 hours in advance, because if this thing is locked, I'm really not supposed to be climbing it. Nobody's supposed to be climbing it. Let's see. Something that's really helpful is to turn all the lights on in the home, including the exterior. And if your buyer happens to be there, of course, it makes the home look really nice to the buyer. But it's very helpful for me as an inspector, because sometimes I've got to spend a lot of time hunting around for switches trying to see if lights will turn on, and so it makes my job faster and easier. And faster is always better for anyone else that's waiting around for me to finish. So,
yeah. Back, legs, joints, everything.
So who do we have here talking?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I guess.
who's not? Somebody's not muted and is having a side conversation. It sounds like. Okay.
It's Siobhan Finch.
Oh, Siobhan. Siobhan, if you could please mute yourself, that would be very helpful. Make sure all doors are unlocked, or that they can be unlocked. Don't touch the thermostat. I have a process of inspecting, and I'll try to make the home as comfortable as possible, but I do need to test the heat in the air, and that means that on a really hot summer day, I'm going to have to turn the furnace on at some point. And usually I wait until the very end, so that I can test it very quickly, and then we can leave. Or if it's a cool morning, I'll test it right at the very beginning. But it's helpful to have full control over that. So those are some things that you can do to help your inspector move faster and finish the job more quickly and so forth. And also make sure that everything gets inspected. So what to focus on when reading reports. So a home inspection is an educational experience for the buyer about their future home. So it includes defects, but also maintenance type items and upgrades. So it's not really to be expected that everything noted in the report will be repaired in the transaction. The inspector shouldn't make any opinion as to which party in the transaction should make the repairs, how they will be completed, or even if they will be completed. So again, the inspector's job really is to just report. And it's not realistic to consider the report just a list of repairs. It may identify conditions that require imminent repair to help prevent further damage. It may recommend further evaluation by a qualified contractor in a specialized field. And it may note systems and or components that are statistically nearing the ends of their service lives and therefore should be budgeted for replacement down the road. They're usually organized into the systems of the home, which are in turn broken into various components. Of course, I'm not going to read all these, but you've got, as I mentioned earlier, structure, roofing, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and so forth. Problems with many of these systems are visibly obvious to you and the buyer when you're doing your avid. So I would focus when reading the report on major systems that are likely to cause a significant expense if there's a problem. So that might be the roof, chimney, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Also any potential health risks. Obviously, if you see something that looks like mold, that would be a concern and potentially a costly one. So it's important to understand how to differentiate between maintenance, defects, upgrades, safety issues, and life expectancy. Some examples of maintenance are just cleaning and painting and caulking and repairing or replacing existing elements that are in disrepair or no longer functioning properly. Defects, worn out or damaged roofs, AC not cooling or furnace not heating, missing smoke or carbon monoxide alarms, things of that nature. Leaks, certainly plumbing leaks. There's just some examples of roofs that are definitely defective. There's a leak in a crawl space here, that's a defect. Upgrades can be pretty confusing. As I talked about before, a house of the 50s does not need to be brought up to current codes, or any home doesn't need to be brought up to current codes unless it was just built, in which case it should be to code. It should have been issued a certificate of occupancy by a city inspector who confirmed that everything was done properly. An example of this is that, for instance, GFCI protection, those little outlets that have the set and reset buttons, they were required in bathrooms in 1975. And then in 1978, they required them in garages and the exterior. Not until 1987 were they required in kitchens, and then in 1992 in wet bars. So if the build date preceded these dates, it would be considered an upgrade to add GFCI protection and not a defect. But in any case, it's a great safety upgrade, so I always note it in my reports because it's not terribly expensive either. Galvanized plumbing. That, of course, is, as you probably know, well, it's an older style of plumbing, common in 1960s and older, but and the pipes corrode from the inside. So as eventually the actual interior diameter of the pipe gets small enough that it starts to constrict water flow, and then that becomes problematic. But if it's not leaking and water pressure is reasonable, that's not considered a defect as long as there's no failure. But it is something that a homeowner may want to consider upgrading in the future, and eventually probably will need to. Raised foundations with piers and posts. A lot of older homes have concrete piers with a post connecting the pier and the beam. They're just resting on one another. And for instance, here's an illustration of that. There's nothing connecting those elements. And that's usually what I see. Here's an example of strapping, which is, probably a seismic upgrade. Well, this is actually an example of a newer construction or installation. So, but you can get all these things strapped, but that would be an upgrade. And usually I don't see these things in homes. Same thing with the home being bolted to the foundation. That would be an upgrade. There's an example of a bolt, and there's something that is usually that's a typical retrofit for seismic security, but it's an upgrade. Safety issues, missing GFCI outlets, railing deficiencies, trip hazards, open junction boxes. There's kind of an odd example of a safety hazard there. That little shelf alongside the stairs could, a little kid could walk out on that and that makes that staircase more dangerous for a child. Appliance life. When an appliance gets old, it's said to be at the end of its expected life. And that includes water heaters, HVAC, AC, furnace. But these are based on statistics, and oftentimes these systems do function well beyond what they're expected to. And as long as it's not damaged and still functioning properly, it's not a defect. There's no problem, but the buyer needs to keep in mind that they're not getting a new house in most cases, of course, unless it is actually a new house. So the bottom line is that you don't want to let your seller be pressured into thinking that they have to honor all the buyer's requests, and you want to keep things in perspective and help guide the two parties to agreeable solutions. So let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. I'm sure we've all seen a lot of changes. I know I have. Business dropped off a cliff for me really in the beginning of April, and it's been coming back slowly. But we have some new requirements. We all have to wear a face mask when we're outside our homes. We need to social distance at least 6 feet from others. There's that California Association of Realtors standardized entry form that oftentimes we're signing. I think that's a good idea. But there are a lot of challenges that come with this, and it's really tough. I'm sure if you're out there doing business, you know what I'm talking about. And we've got a lot of habits that we need to learn to change that so far doesn't seem to be real easy for many of us. We have a lot less face-to-face interaction, which is really our bread and butter in this business. As realtors, you know what I'm talking about. We want to connect with people face-to-face. We can't shake their hands. We can't see each other's dazzling smiles anymore. When we're out and about with our face masks on, we can't hand things to each other. So these habits need to change. We need to think about setting things down on tables for people when we want to pass them over to them rather than handing to them. Can't open doors for each other really. And that's challenging. I did a condo the other day, and the agent unlocked the door, the front door of the building, and opened the door, and there was no way I could walk through that door and be 6 feet away from her. And she got on the elevator, and I said, I'll take the next one. So it's awkward and frustrating, but it's today's reality, unfortunately. And all the documents that you guys need to have signed, that's all best done virtually if you can do it that way, even though it's always good to have that FaceTime with your client. So some of the new practices that I am doing are, I'm wearing my face mask at all times. And that has become a challenge because at first I couldn't figure out how to keep my glasses from fogging up. A friend of mine actually gave me a great bit of advice, and that is to pull my glasses out a little bit and set them on the top edge of the face mask. And that really helps a lot. But then while I'm inspecting, I find that my glasses are slipping down. And because I wear bifocals, that was a problem. So now I'm actually wearing just magnifying glasses, like reading glasses, that are pulled out and a little bit down my nose. And then I'm either looking through the glasses or I'm looking over the glasses. So that's actually found seems to be working for me. But I don't love wearing that face mask, that is for sure. I'm wearing nitrile gloves at all times, which I don't mind, but it does make it harder to identify leaks because I can't really feel water. I'm wiping down or disinfecting frequently touched surfaces at the completion of my inspection. I'm still experimenting with that. I have antibacterial wipes, and whether or not those are actually going to kill a coronavirus, I'm not sure they are. I also have a disinfectant called BioEsk. It's a botanical disinfectant. I bought a couple gallons of it recently. And you spray it on a surface and it kills coronavirus in 1 minute. And you don't have to wipe it off like a bleach-based disinfectant, which people might, have an adverse reaction to. You can spray it on and walk away, but it's kind of messy. I've tried spraying it on doorknobs and faucets, and it's just you know, kind of messy. And so I'm trying to figure out what works best. I'm also advising clients not to attend the inspection. And I know that that's not always going to be possible, because if you're spending a lot of money on a home as a buyer, you want to be able to really take a close look at the house, and you may not have had much opportunity to do that. So, but that I think it's the safest thing for everybody is for people to not be together right now. I'm requesting that agents who must be present to retreat to one area of the home or to their vehicle, if possible. And of course, if I would require that the occupants of the home vacate if possible. But, you know, I did an inspection the other day on a townhome, and the buyer had 3 people with her, and the seller had to be there because the agent wasn't there yet, and it was occupied by the seller. So there are a lot of people running around that little townhome, and it's challenging. You know, you can't walk up a flight of stairs near if somebody's up at the top. It's just it's challenging. So, and a lot of times, you know, you need to get more than one inspection done, and that can be a challenge as well. So if you've got other inspectors coming, I'd love to know who's coming and maybe kind of around what time, so I can have an idea of what I'm going to be dealing with. Because the bottom line is I'm going to work a lot better and a lot faster when I don't have to think about social distancing as I move around the home, and I need to be able to move around the home freely while I'm doing my work. Because a lot of what I do is routine based, and if I get out of my routine, then that could potentially cause me to miss something. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. But these protocols do keep everyone safer. I firmly believe that. So it's best for us to try to do these things when we can, but there are always going to be exceptions. One of the things that I can't do anymore that is great, a great part of my customer service, is I used to bring a cooler with cold water and snacks and phone chargers and things like that for anybody who needed them. I'm not doing that anymore for the time being anyway. Also, if a property had no furniture in it, I would bring a couple of folding chairs so that people would have a place to sit down. Definitely not doing that anymore. You know, I'm also asking the client to sign and pay in advance, so that there's, even if they are there at the inspection, we can avoid contact. Part of my customer service is to print a hard copy of the report on site and put it in a nice binder and give it to the client. And I'm not doing that as much. I'm doing it some, but you know, we're just trying to avoid that contact. But I am sending if the client's not there, I'll send a video email at the completion of the inspection, just kind of going over some of the summary, letting them know if there are any major issues to be concerned about. I'm happy to review the report by phone or a Zoom call if desired. So those are the things that I'm doing that I've had to change, really, to keep everyone as safe as possible during this new situation. One thing that Pillar to Post has coming soon is something we call PTP 360. It's actually a virtual tour of the home that's linked to the inspection. So you can you tour through the home. I use a 360 camera to take shots of the whole interior and exterior of the home. It adds about 15 minutes or so to the inspection, I understand. But it creates this virtual tour that again, it's got comments linked to the inspection report. So if you see like something that's an issue, a defect, then you just click on it and it shows you the comment. So you can see all those things in a full tour of the home. And that's a great tool for this current environment. And it can, you know, because if the buyer's not there, they can actually see the full home and get a look at the whole place without having to be there. it's also great if you get a pre-listing inspection, because then you've got a virtual tour that you can add to your listing, so that people can see the home without coming to visit it in person. So that's what's changed about COVID-19. Now, I guess I am going to, well, let's see, this is my final slide. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I hope you learned something, and I'd be happy to take questions. So I think that Kathleen is going to maybe let me know some of the questions that may be in the chat bar. And if you have a question, please just put it in the chat box, and I'll address those.
It doesn't, I think that Bobby had asked a question about anything new that you are noticing during, for inspections during COVID-19 that agents should be aware of. And I think that you pretty much covered that in your last section.
Okay.
Is that, Bobby, are you good with that answer, or did you need more information?
Like I said, I'm happy to share my presentation with anyone who's interested. So there's my contact information. So, and I'll, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to stop my screen share, I think, or maybe I'll give another minute here for you to grab my contact information if you want it, and then I'll stop my screen share so that I can actually access the chat box and see what some of those questions are. Does anyone else have a question?
What do you charge for a general inspection?
Well,
With
they
or
started
without the PTP 360.
Yeah, my inspections start at $299. It's primarily based on square footage. So $299 would be for a apartment style condo up to 1,000 square feet that was built since around 1970, something like that, because there are some age fees that are applied as some homes get really a lot older. Sometimes there's a little bit of a fee for that because they can be quite a bit more complicated.
Is there anything new with agents AVID?
Not that I know of. Yeah, not that I know of. You guys probably would know more about that than I do because I'm not an agent. So.
Okay. Emily Link, first of all, gave you a wonderful compliment. She said it was great. She's looking forward to having the presentation slides. She's going to be emailing you to get those.
Great.
And then also she is suggesting that maybe people ask for a copy of the CAR form PEAD,
right?
Because the number of people entering the building is limited. And if I may, John, I'm not raining on your parade, but John did mention that there have been some new forms added to this, especially in zip form for the COVID-19 to address the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that you do go into your Zip Form Plus account. You view your forms, and the easiest way to see all of the forms is in the search field when you're looking at all your forms, is to enter the word Corona. And every single form that has been added that addresses anything to do with the coronavirus will appear there. And I encourage you to really take a look at those forms.
It shows up faster, it shows a piece of lime.
What, dear?
I was just joking, trying to make light of the situation. I said they would show up faster if you show them a piece of lime, Corona beer.
Yeah, that is funny. But
Hey, John, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah, sure, Brian.
That PTP video, when you said that we're able to get it and show it as a pre-inspection.
Yes.
Is there a way for you to take off all the so we can publicize it without the
defect? Oh, without the report. That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you yet. It's a system that they're in the process of rolling out to us, and I have the equipment, but I haven't started using it yet. So I don't know yet, but I'll definitely be promoting it on my constant contact email blasts that I send out once every 2 weeks. As soon as I have more information.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John, can I have your email address, please, again?
Yes, absolutely. It's john.schroeder, JOHN.SCHROEDER at pillar2post.com. So that's PILLAR. You probably saw it. PILLARTOPOST.com.
If I can make a suggestion,
And I'll
put
put it-
your sheet on there so people can take a picture of the screen.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let me see if I can share that again.
Also, how much do you charge for the virtual video again, please?
I don't know yet. That's something that is not something that I offer just yet. So I believe that that's going to be included. I don't think there's going to be an additional charge for that, but I'm not positive yet. So let me see if I can get my thing back up here.
I think if you guys want, you can unmute so that you can ask John questions.
Sure, that would be fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my contact info in the chat box.
There you go. Well, that was some great information, though. John, I really appreciate that. That's super good.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful. Let's see.
Hey, John, have you found yourself doing more inspections lately or less inspections lately?
Less, yeah.
Less?
Yeah. In April, I think my business was down by about half.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm curious about you guys. What are you seeing?
It's still moving, man. The prices are slowly strong, but as far as there's a little bit of a hesitation, I would say. Everybody's hesitant. But there's super motivated people out there still, but you're finding a lot more hesitant people than motivated.
Right.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments of what they have came across? Maybe a home inspection, maybe something that you guys had a deal going with an inspector that you had a question that you just kind of didn't want to ask him. Here's your chance to ask another home inspector. Anybody have any questions? Let's see. Great presentation, John. Thank you.
I did. I did. You know, when all of this started to happen, I did see some things fall apart. Like I had an inspection schedule where the seller lost her job, and so she backed out, and so that didn't happen. And then I was doing a pre-listing inspection for a seller who was occupying the home, and they canceled that. So there was some of that going on, especially when everybody was really starting to freak out because we didn't know where this was going. And we still don't really know where it's going, but we kind of know what it's about now. We just don't know how long it's going to last and how quickly it's going to change back to normal. So
I recommend that everyone read the CAR email that came out. I think it was this morning. It's got some very good information about the market and their forecasts. So please be reading that so that you can share that with your buyers and sellers.
thank you for that.
Thank you, Emily. Let's see. And that was about it, right? Hey, Kat, we have until 12. You guys want to just hang around until 12? Maybe if anybody has any more questions or.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Roughly, you're charging them about 30 cents per square foot. Would that be correct?
I've never even thought about it. I don't know for sure. I don't think
1,000 square feet, $300. That's 30 cents. So if it's a 2,000 square foot, that would be 600.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like that would be correct with for that particular example. I think it probably varies. We actually have 3 different inspection packages that we have: a plus package, a premium package, and a prestige package. And the plus is your standard comprehensive home inspection, but the premium adds infrared imaging, which is good for finding electrical overheating and hidden leaks that aren't visible to the naked eye. It also includes something called an appliance recall safety check that registers all the major appliances in the home, including the heat and air and water heater, with a service that will alert you to any recalls, past or future. And you can, if you buy new appliances, you can register any new appliances with that service as well. And a rodent inspection and a lifetime advisory maintenance service where you can call me with questions for as long as you own the home, that sort of thing. That's the premium package. And then the prestige package is actually aimed at people that have respiratory issues like asthma, allergies, things like that. We actually do an air quality assessment for for allergens and mold, and determine whether or not there's, you know, higher likelihood of problems with any of those things.
Cool. That's some great packages, John. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's see. I think that was about it, guys. Let's see, what time is it? About 12:55. Anybody joining, don't forget to join us next Thursday. And thank you so much, John, man. Round of applause.